Good to see you.
Yeah. My laptop, it's old, it kind of craps out, so today I wasn't able to get it. They didn't have the second screen, like the presentation screen big on the screen, but everything else is good. Yeah, thank you for setting everything up. Thank you.
When you say, was he supposed to be here? Taking at the Reinfurt last year, going to see her.
it's. Test, test, test. Hey, hello everybody. So we're gonna get started. Super lovely to see everybody here. I'm Zach Lieberman. This is Taeyoon Choi.
Hey everyone.
Quick little bit of housekeeping. So we're super happy to have you here. Just so you know, the bathrooms are outside to your left. So you just go out of this hallway to the left. We do have, if you're thirsty, we have some of sparkling water, suggested donation, and was there anything else to say about the logistics of?
Yeah.
You want to say something about Westbeth, where we are?
Sure. Okay. So who is here for the first time? Could you raise your hand? Wow. Welcome to our home. We are the School for Poetic Computation. We are housed at the Westbeth Artist Community, which is a historic nonprofit that supports artist communities. And the other wing, if you have seen on the way here, that's residential. Artists live there. And this wing is it's industrial. So we are in the storefront, and we are just really thankful for Westbeth for having us here, and we have a good relationship with them. So if you don't know, check them out. And before it was Westbeth, it was a Bell Telephone Laboratories, and Claude Shannon worked here, and Alan Turing worked here for a summer as well. So there's a rich history of technology and also art.
We would love to just explain about the program. So the School for Poetic Computation was started 6 years ago, and we have been running, we've been doing 10-week programs, 2-week programs, experimental programs overseas in other cities. You'll hear a little bit of that tonight. But this 10-week program is really our staple. It's this thing that we've been doing repeatedly. We started in 2013. And the 10-week program starts with the Salon. So the basic idea is the students come here, and for the first week, we don't touch computers at all. We spend time drawing. We're doing touching flowers, movement exercises. There's a lot of you think you're coming to the School for Poetic Computation, think you're gonna open up the laptop, but actually no, we are writing on paper, drawing, and just building teaching tools and doing a lot of experiments to understand, how we're going to learn and what kind of space we want to be. So quickly, can the incoming students, so we've been here for 1 week, we started on Monday, can the incoming students raise their hands? So take a moment and just look at the closest hand near you. These brave people have decided to come here for 10 weeks, and please, come say hi to them. I want to do this thing I always do. I invite everybody to stand up for a second. And I want you to put your right hand in the air. And I want you to put it on the shoulder of somebody that you don't know. And if you're not comfortable being touched, don't worry, you can back away. And now I want you to take your left hand and put it in the air. And put it on the shoulder of somebody else that you don't know. Yeah. And now I want you to quickly introduce yourself and make a new friend. And then when you're ready, you can have a seat. Yeah. When you're ready, you can have a seat. No. Yeah. I always just want to walk away. Yeah. Do you want to shout out the teachers? Yeah. So Yeah. So whenever I do this exercise, I just want to leave. I just think we should just leave and let everybody talk to each other. Really quickly, in addition to sort of shouting out the students, I would love to see the hands of anybody who's an alumni. So anybody who was a student here. So take a look. That seems like a lot of hands in the back. But take a look for alumni. So also feel free to recognize the closest hand and go say hi to them to hear about their experience here. And then you want to talk about the teaching and classes?
Yeah. And in the meantime, there are some empty spaces up front. If you don't mind sitting on the floor, I recommend you to come sit close. It's going to be a really good show. So this is the time to make your way into the front. The School for Poetic Computation would not run without one person, and that person is Lauren Gardner. Could you raise your hand? She's over there. She's organizing the session, making sure that we have food, we have electricity, and also the curriculum and communication. So big shout out to Lauren. And we have few tracks of studies at the school. The first is code, and type of a visual programming, and that's run by Zach with Matt, who's also in the audience. And then and Alex, who's a TA. So we have faculty and teaching assistants and collaborators who run the classes. And the electronic classes are run by CW&T, which is a design studio. And Sebastian and Thierry are the teaching assistants for that. And we also have a critical theory course run by American artists, who's right there. And Sige, who's going to be speaking, will be the teaching assistant this session. And also we have a code poetry, which is run by a few teachers, Todd Anderson and Melanie Hoff, and then also Fernando, who's going to be our TA/teachers. And I teach, and also there's a few other teachers like Celine Katzman and then April Soderman. And the list goes on. So it's really a group effort and collaboration, and we really actively invite our alumni and community to be part of the program as much as possible.
All right, so let's get started with our first speaker. So David Reinfurt, I'm trying to think of the best way to introduce him. I had this, you know when you come face to face with a book and you open up a book and it's totally this place that is full of all these ideas that you've, disparate ideas that you've been thinking about, and the book is a door. It opens a door. And I had this experience several years ago. I was I think I was at MoMA poking around the bookstore, and I found this weird book, and it was called Bulletins from the Serving Library. And I was like, what is this thing? I don't even know what the serving library is. I could sort of grab the book because of this cryptic cover. And inside the book, there were essays about Donald Knuth and typography and sort of the intersection of computation and typography and random numbers. And there was something about this writing that really spoke to me. And so I've been kind of stalking David and his publishing house and the work that they've been doing for a long time, and so excited to see this book that he just published, and hopefully he'll mention it or show it or so on. And this book is called New Program for Graphic Design, and the title of the book, it sounds like a textbook, but it's actually, it's a lecture, and it's really lovely. It's full of images, and it's like a journey through David's brain. Super thrilled to have him speaking to us, so let's give a warm hand for David.
Okay. Thank you, Taeyoon and Zach, and everybody here for inviting me. I'm very happy to do this. I understand it's to be 20 minutes long, so I'm going to watch myself. Will you tell me when it's... Okay, good. You'll shut me up. Okay. I'm actually going to just talk about this book. As it turns out, this book contains a lot of things that are around my work, other people's work that I really admire or enjoy, and some of my own work as well. I want to describe a little bit about that book to start, so let's get here. Okay, great. So this is a book. It's been published just this September by DAP together with Inventory Press. Inventory Press, based in Los Angeles, they initiated the project. Inventory Press came to me and asked me about making a book around the teaching that I've done at Princeton for the last 10 years now. I teach graphic design at Princeton. This is going to be really short, so we can get to the meat of the stuff. Did somebody laugh at this? Does anybody recognize, who's in that?
No, I had that Dropbox shirt.
Oh, okay. Well, the person, I thought maybe he was a friend of yours, because that's Eric Lee, who's a fantastic, wonderful designer and programmer, amazing. And anyway, yes, at the time the joke was that Dropbox was a t-shirt company, right? Ha ha ha. Anyway, so I teach at Princeton. About 10 years ago, I was invited in by the director of the visual arts program to introduce graphic design at Princeton. They didn't have graphic design before this. The visual art program is geared to undergraduate students exclusively. It is, you don't really go to Princeton to study art, right? And so the same goes for graphic design. In trying to introduce a graphic design course there, I thought it made a lot of sense to treat it as a liberal art in some way. So in other words, a kind of broad, specific set of skills that you learn that you can apply broadly to everything else in the world that you do. I work as a graphic designer in New York, have had an independent practice for 20 years. I write, I do art projects, do a bunch of other things as well. Teaching has always been part of what I do. At Princeton, it's become a larger part of what I do. When I thought about figuring out graphic design at Princeton or trying to introduce this, the response from the school was that we're not a trade school. We don't teach a skill like that. And it took a little convincing to let them know that maybe the way it was going to be taught was not going to be in that way. Okay, so starting 10 years ago, I introduced one typography class that has grown into a suite of classes and other people teaching there who have helped develop the program, including Daniel Aubert and Francesca Grassi and Alice Chung and Laura Coombs, and coming up next semester, Laurel Schwolst as well. The program has, it's gone well. So when Inventory Press approached me to make a book about this, I didn't want to write a book about the teaching at Princeton. I knew that would be dead on arrival. I give slide lectures in these courses, but they're pretty lively, free-ranging. They're about things that I like. Sometimes they're about my work. They're about a bunch of things. So we decided what would be better, and I knew I'd worked those slide lectures out pretty well over the course of the 10 years. And so we decided what would be better is rather than write a book, to speak the book. And so we set up a performance, a kind of event in Los Angeles last summer, which was at this building, which couldn't be more different in context than the Ivy campus of Princeton, the Richard Neustra Institute, and we set up 3 days where I gave 6 lectures a day, 45 minutes apiece, 15 minutes of chugging juice in between, and during the breaks, other people were playing synthesizers and doing it was kind of a carnival. It was great. There were some students who were conscripted to come. There were general interest people who came, and each day was based around one course. So it was 6 lectures, which constituted that course over the course of one day. The entire thing was video recorded and transcribed, and that's the basis of the book, in order to capture some quality of spoken rather than written language. Of course, then after the fact, Eugenia Bell, editor, banged it into shape, and then I rewrote an awful lot of it, but tried to keep some of that kind of free aspect to it. So that was 3 days. That was a marathon. That's the basis of the book. What I thought I would do today is something I tried a week ago as well, which is I took all of those slideshows, all the keynotes, made it into one master keynote, made that into a QuickTime movie, put some synthesizer music with it, and we have that. So it's like 3 semesters of courses as one QuickTime movie, which we're going to play. Okay, and this is a bit of audience participation as well. Just get that queued up here.
Is the audio plugged in?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Okay, you're gonna get used to that theme. Okay, so this is all of the visual material from those slideshows organized in the in the arrangement of the classes. The first one's typography. The second one is Gestalt, which is about everything that's not letters, and then the third class is called Interface, which is just specifically about computer interfaces because I thought that was urgent. Okay, so what I thought we could do here is I'm going to let this play, and at some point somebody's going to say stop, and I'm just going to stop. Yep. Oh, nice one. Okay, this is a black screen. We're going to see what's coming next. Oh, look at that. Okay. Here's what's next. There's always something next. This is a painting by Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, the Bauhaus teacher and artist, Hungarian artist. It is one of three. It's called the telephone paintings. There are three of them that will be on view in the reopening of MoMA. This painting has a curious quality to it, which was he made this painting in early 1930s. The way he told the story of it being made was that he called 3 different sign shops in Berlin and asked them to have a piece of graph paper, and he had a great piece of graph paper on his side. He described to them which squares are which colors, and the sign shop made the notes. The entire design was communicated over this thin bandwidth of the telephone line. The 3 sign shops made these porcelain enamel signs, and they became artworks. And so Moholy, I bring him, he's one person I show in the class. I show a lot of different figures. Moholy happens to be one who he teases the distinction between art and design regularly, and he's also, a lot of the work has to do with its modes of production, like in this case. We're going to see what's next. Okay, here is one of the telephone paintings. Here's another one slightly smaller. They're all 3 quite different in their shape. Okay. This comes in a section of the typography course that is about photo typesetting. Photo typesetting was a small blip of typographic technology that lasted for 50 years but never really took hold. The typography class follows modes of typographic production from the letterpress to the computer. The students begin in the type shop, actually typesetting a text by Beatrice Ward collectively. They work in pairs and spend 4 weeks doing the manual labor of putting one letter in front of the other, which opens up their brain to think about other things. And in fact, they continue the course, kind of the speed of the typographic work picks up. They work on photo typesetting on a photocopier, and that's a bit faster, and then they work on the computer, and that's a lot faster. They're always working with texts that are from the history of typography or have something directly to do with typography. And this is something that's unique to design, I think, which is you can give them you can make work that is also the method in which you're working, the design approach. You can also deal with material that is about the subject as well. This is the cover of a Moholy designed it's a photogram for a magazine published in Berlin in English, as it would turn out. This cover wasn't used, but I use it to talk about photo typography, photo typesetting. Shall we go on? I think we shall. Okay. We can also add other. Okay, let's see where. Oh, I know where we are. Okay, we're going to back up so we can see just a little bit of where we are. Okay, that figure in the middle is Bruno Munari, Italian artist and designer. Here he is on a television program in the mid-1970s. He's doing an art project with a group of children. Munari has had a polemic that he argued for artists to come down from their pedestals and paint a sign for the butcher shop if they know how to do it. And so he made an urgent plea. He was trained as an artist. Most of his friends were artists. He was famously a late futurist, which I like that idea. But anyway, he thought that only by making design work would art have a possibility of reaching a greater public and making a reconnection with the public. In the 1970s, towards the end of his career, he made particularly a lot of work with young people. And this is a workshop that he gave to a television audience as well, where the students are drawing with a wax crayon and then exposing it with lemon juice and a candle. Anyway, it's the work that he did with children is not because he thinks children are our future or anything quite that schlocky. Children are our future, but that's kind of just a fact. Anyway, so it took me a long time. I've admired Munari's work and worked with it in a bunch of different ways over the years. It took me a while to to at least form an opinion about why he was so interested in working with children. And that happened when I was in an exhibition of his work in a small town in northern Italy. And at the same time, a group of school children were there, and they were participating in a Munari workshop, which has been codified and even sold on to be a kind of pedagogical method, which I'm a bit skeptical of. But either way, you heard the noises from the other room. It's just kind of blurp, 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 you know, like the sounds of children working and the kind of bits of language that they were making as they were doing this. And I realized, to me, he just saw this as an immediate conduit to a kind of nonsense that he was always looking for in his design work. Like, working with children was not about, was less about kind of instilling any sort of education. It was more about like convening a primal scene for nonsense and and making a case for that as being part of serious design work. So here we see this plays a bit. We'll see what comes after this. Okay. This continues on to an exercise I show with Bruno Munari, and then the students also do, but this is in a typography class, which is called a book called Drawing a Tree, which is an exercise which is a book where Munari simply describes how to draw a tree, and it follows a definite method, an algorithm where you take one branch, and then it divides into two in a two-branching pattern, each one thinner than the one before, and you just continue on that recursively. But then, of course, the actual drawings of the trees can change based on the environment and on the exact quality of the tree, etc. So this is in a lecture called T as in Tree, and I talk about these trees, a collection of a unified collection of differences as a kind of surrogate for typography, for thinking about how the alphabet works. The alphabet works by the distance between the letters, between those shapes, etc. Okay, I'm going to we're going to go on. And actually, we're going to speed it up a bit. Okay. This stands as a sketch for the future, Muriel Cooper and the Visible Language Workshop. This is a title for Muriel Cooper is a figure who works her way into a lot of the work that I show in class. And that is because of her kind of three-part practice. She was trained as a graphic designer, worked as a graphic designer first for MIT, then worked in the MIT Press, designed the MIT Press logo in 1964, presided over the MIT Press as their media director for a number of years, and then threw that all away at age 50 as a very well-known graphic designer and started working on interfaces, late 1970s. She recognized that as a site that would be increasingly important, but a visual interface hardly existed at that moment. And she also integrated teaching directly into all of the work that she did. I really feel like that was it was all part of one work. And so I bring Muriel Cooper up in each of the three classes at different points. When I start this slide talk, I'm actually talking about how I got to know Muriel Cooper's work. And the way I got to know Muriel Cooper's work was by doing a graphic design project at the Center for Advanced Studies at MIT, which no longer exists, but it was an autonomous art organization at MIT. Here's an image of Muriel Cooper, a self-portrait as a Cyclops with a SX70 camera. It's a massively worked over image, and it's one of the few images we find of Muriel Cooper herself, because typically she was behind the camera, which is pretty interesting. One reason I like to show it. Let's see if we see something else. We're going to fast forward through that a little bit. That's a video editing console at MIT in the mid-70s. Well, I'll just mention that when I started on the project, through which I found out about Muriel Cooper's work, I did that by visiting the MIT Center for Advanced Visual Studies and going through a closet of printed matter, because I realized the printed matter would give me some insights to what their graphic design looked like in the past and what had happened at this place. And so I just went through there and made a series of photographs. And I think this is typical of the work I like, both in the work I do, but the work other people do, where design is not just a kind of method for making something, but it's a method of inquiry. And so you can learn about things by applying a kind of design methodology to them. I was interested in how these posters were made and why they looked the way they looked. And I did that by just kind of inventorying them and then understanding what was going on and where it was going on at the time. I eventually laid them all out in a big room, kind of by both chronologically and by what they looked like. Okay, we'll continue on. Or maybe at the faster speed. Any stop? Okay, great. We'll go back slightly there. Okay. This is a print. This is a large-scale Polaroid, a large format Polaroid, 30 by 40 inches. It was made, we're going to go back. This was made at the Visible Language Workshop at MIT in the mid-1970s. The date escapes me. The Visible Language Workshop was a combination of a teaching situation and a production facility. It was actually organized around 2 offset printing presses. It was founded by Muriel Cooper together with Ron McNeil in the School of Architecture at MIT. The 2 printing presses printed many of those posters that I just showed you in the earlier little bit. And so it was functioning as the place where you have a school poster printed. But it was also, the people who printed those were the students. So they were learning about design and printing by having hands-on role in it. That mixture of kind of hands-on and thinking continues to inform what I do, but I also show it to the students to get them thinking. This particular image is made in a pretty interesting way. The Visible Language Workshop was not just offset printing. Computers started made their way into the facility in the mid-1970s and onwards. The place was well funded by a grant from the National Billboard Association, and so they were able to have computers. They wrote an early version of Photoshop called SIS, which was a pixel editing program. This image was made with SIS. So it was drawn on a computer monitor. Actually, it's like late 1970s is when this was. And furthermore, this image was then basically color scanned and sent over a phone line, like color faxed. It was actually a slow scan transmission from one place in the university to another place. When it arrived at the place where it landed, then that image on the CRT screen was printed on this Polaroid paper, but there's no printer. So what did the students do? They took they had a photo enlarger. They had 30 by 40 inch Polaroid paper, like very large paper, instant paper, because Polaroid was around the corner, was giving them their stuff. They took the CRT monitor, hung it upside down on the enlarger, made it all black, exposed the light on the screen to the Polaroid paper, and made these beautiful prints. And so it's an artifact that if you kind of interrogate its production process, you learn an awful lot about what ideas were passing around this. I really like the way this looks like a kind of infinite space that you see later in some of the Visible Language Workshop work, and also we recognize from the infinite depth of a computer screen, let's say. Getting close? Yeah. Okay, then we're going to speed how much? 2 minutes, okay. Wait, hold on, let's really speed this. Stop. Wait, let's let it go a bit. Sesame Street, that'd be a good one. We're about, there's plenty left to go. A bunch of work. Where are we going to stop? That's a good one. Okay, I'll keep talking. Hey, that's a man running. This is from the Gestalt class. The Gestalt class spends a semester trying to define that fuzzy word Gestalt, which I heard us stop. No, not there. Sorry. These are a series of images by Jason Fulford, a photographer. The Gestalt class spends a whole semester trying to define that word, where the mistaken understanding of it is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's exactly wrong. Gestaltists think about the whole as being something completely different than the sum of the parts. It's not constituted by the sum of the parts. It comes before the sum of the parts. The wholes are indivisible units of sensation. And so we spend a semester talking about that and how we understand how things move when they're discrete frames, like that Running Man was. We also talk about graphics. We talk about the early Macintosh computer interface. We talk about Susan Kerr. We talk about George Corrin. Bruno Minari as well. And actually, we're just going to speed this up and we're going to get to the end without stopping so I don't actually talk. Oh, we're racing. Okay, that's a slow motion film. Let's speed up. It was, it's true. Okay, that's Bruno Minari. Here's some polarized light work. That's a Tetracono. That's ABC, the first, that's Paul Rand and Susan Kerr together. This is about the Whole Earth catalog. So on and so forth. The third class, we're into the third class. It's called Interface. The semester-long assignment is to design the watch part of the Apple Watch, the only part that's off-limits to developers. Very simple task, reductive. The students end up thinking about time and representations of time and then end up with a kind of proposed, fairly worked-out interface about that. Some of the lectures from this course include one called Zapintex and Pulsars, which is about calendars in pre-Columbian Mexico, or one about photocopier controls from Olivetti in the late 70s, or one that's about the Tetracono, which we see here, a strange product made by Bruno Minari also. And then we see, yeah, that goes on for a little while. And I think we're just about done. Oh, and then the Metro card vending machine interface, we talk about that and show some bits around that. And AT&T commercials, and Muriel Cooper again, of course, and Muriel Cooper and Susan Kerr together constitute the final talk in this, which is kind of the grand finale, which is called Desktops and Trash Cans, and it's about inventing new graphic languages for novel kind of interactions, which we haven't dealt with yet, and what that meant and how it happened then and how it is still happening now. And I think that's, I think we're at the end. We're really at the end. That's Susan Kerr on a public access TV show. Okay. Done. Okay.
So we have time for like some question Q&A. We have anybody ask questions about
How did you say that music was made?
The music was made. The music was made in Los Angeles. The music was made on a Moog synthesizer, and it was made very quickly and without much thought. But then through brute force repetition, it became a kind of theme. And in Los Angeles, that was fun because it added a degree of kind of frivolity to the whole thing. So it's not just me up on stage like yapping like this. It did and didn't, yeah. Yeah.
So it's a lot about ideas and concepts. Do you wrap craft or embed craft into the process of teaching?
I do definitely in the when you're doing the work, and so that happens never in the slideshows, but always in the like when students are working, when you're working with them individually, etc. But they're pretty quick. I mean, they're a semester long, and it's so you can only get so far. Yeah. Yeah.
Looking a bit at the history of the typography and graphic design, do you find some interesting turning points that happened, or?
Yeah, I think in typography specifically, that course is arranged around like these 3 typographic technologies, and that each one changed the kind of speed at which information traveled around so consequentially, and they can be tracked to the repetition of the printed word. You know, I mean that's the story. Anyway, so those are clear inflection points. I don't know. I always feel like in teaching it could just be about the last 10 years and be equally interesting and dynamic, but they're not going to learn about the otherwise. So I suppose, yeah.
I saw momentarily flash by there's like a circuitry that had like interesting or like considered design?
Trying to think which that would be. That might be the section on the design of flat buttons on photocopiers for Olivetti, the Italian typewriter company in the late or early 1980s, actually. And it's just a really concise case study of that problem of like hard buttons going away and soft ones appearing, and what do you do with the graphic language in order to kind of compensate for that loss of physicality. And so there's a really nice book that is about it and goes from the small design of a photocopier button to the first image in the book is the Rosetta Stone. Like it's taken in the broadest possible context. It's kind of loopy, but it's amazing. It's good. Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned something about using design methodologies to do research. Was there anything that you learned doing research that went back to your design methodology?
Definitely that's the case. I guess the research, I always think of it as like a combination of making and kind of looking into something. And so the making is like fresh making, but that's part of that's what I like to do. And so I don't want to just kind of understand what's happened before, of course. I want to synthesize it and make something new. And so it's always kind of explicitly in that loop. So like making this, whatever, like this silly music that goes with this, is kind of a thing too. It's like could leave that as generic or could like make something out of it. So, is that okay? Thank you very much.
I'll get the computer set up.
Yeah. This guy, I unplugged this guy. Okay. Thank you so much. Just this
guy
into this guy. Yeah, right here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then your computer's there.
Yep. Got it.
All right. So while we're setting up, I would like to ask you one favor. Can I take a photo of you all smiling at my camera? All right, I'm gonna start from here. It's gotta be a few photos. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. And this side of the room. 1, 2. Cat, I can't see you. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Almost.
Yeah. And so, we have Bufu up next. It's such an incredible honor, and it's really heartwarming to have them back at SFPC. What? We should do Adel next? Oh, I thought Bufu was next. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So, I got to know Bufu's practice a few years ago, and one of the projects that they had, the title was that solidarity is possible but not inevitable. And I thought that's a really good way to think about what is the common things between us. Like how can you find our community among all these different intersectionalities and differences? And they do their projects through workshops, performances, sometimes involving fashion, art, music, and all types of things. And I've been to some of their events in their DIY organizations and also like in institutional spaces, and there's a sense of a radical generosity in everything that they do, and they treat everyone like family and welcome people into the space, and they share all of their resources, and they're not shy away from asking really hard questions about, for example, capitalism, or for example about gender politics, about technology more recently. So super excited to have Bufu here.
Yes, sorry, I just got so excited. Yes, and do you want to? Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Taeyun, for that beautiful intro. Thank you, Zach and SFPC, for having us. Thank you, Lauren, for these wraps that are in my pocket. My name's Catherine. I use they, them, and we, us pronouns.
It's a gay. I use she, her pronouns.
And before we dive into this, I know we only have 20 minutes. We have a stopwatch running right now. But we want to actually just like stretch out this time as much as we can. So I want to invite everyone just to take a deep breath all together. So inhale and exhale. And before we get started, just also wanted to acknowledge the earth beneath our feet, the land that we're on, Lenape Hoking, the ancestral homeland of Lenape peoples, and thank them for allowing us to live and learn and share space with you all here tonight. Before we get into the bulk of our work, we wanted to show this video that is a clip from our documentary project that we show at the beginning of every presentation. So we'll just take that in.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sorry. Take two.
አቡነ ዘበሰማያት ይትቀደስ ስምከ ወትምጻእ ወይኩን ፈቃድከ በከመ በሰማይ ከማሁ በምድር ሲሳየነ ዘለለዕለትነ ሀበነ ወጌጋየነ ከመ ንሕነኒ ንኅነግ በዘለነ ኢታብአነ እግዚኦ ውስተ መንሱት ለነ ኩሉ ኩይስ ነዲያገኝ መንግስት ኃይል ወስብሐት ለዓለመ ዓለም አሜን። በሰላም ቅዱስ ገብርኤል መልአክ ወቅት የማርያም ሰላም ለኪ ብሩክት አንቲ እምንእስቱ ብሩክ ተፈሥሒ ፍሥሕት ወምልዕተ ጸጋ እግዚአብሔር ምስሌኪ ሰአሊ ወጸልዪ ኀበ ፍቁር ወልድኪ ኢየሱስ ክርስቶስ ከመ ይሠረይና እግዚአብሔር እናንተንም ሰላም አድርጎ ሀገራችሁን ሰላም አድርጎ እንዲህ እንደጠየቃችሁን እግዚአብሔር እናንተንም ደግፎ አቅፎ ደግፎ ሀገራችሁ ሰላም ይሁን። አሜን። ኢትዮጵያና ኮሪያ አንድነታቸው ለዘላለም እንደለመለመ ይኖርልን። አሜን። እናንተም ከዚህ ሩቅ ሀገር መጣችሁ በሬን አንኳኩታችሁ ስለመጣችሁ እግዚአብሔር አምላክ ከእናንተ ጋር ይሁን። እና ይሄ ትልቅ ነገር ነው፣ ለኔ ትልቅ ክብሬ ነው። እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። በሉ ተጋበዙልኝ። እግዚአብሔር ይባርክ።
Okay, Ham. And just to give a little context about what that clip was from, it is from like our ongoing documentary project, which is kind of how we initially became working together, and you'll hear more about all of us and what the work is. But this project looking at Black and Asian cultural and political relationships, and when we were shooting in Ethiopia, we were looking at this particular relationship. There's like a sister city thing happening between Seoul and Addis Ababa, and we were sitting with an elder, and they had this really beautiful prayer for us. And I think in the context of the work, it's really important too. But for this moment right here, and as we start presentations, I think it helps us to kind of just really honor the kind of work that we're trying to do and honor its spiritual lineage, and just the kind, like why we're doing the work that we're doing, and thinking of it really as like a communal, spiritual, and like kind of like paying our dues as being humans on the planet and trying to do it as well as we can. And kind of going off of that and lineage, we're going to read off some quotes, and some quotes maybe we can just pause and y'all can just like take some time, like take time to read this, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's happening here. So in 2016, we had the distinct pleasure and also the distinct troll of taking over a warehouse space in Brooklyn prior to it being demolished and turned into condos and, you know, whatever. And all over the walls of the space that we took over, we laid claim to the space by putting up these different quotes of people and ideologies that we admire and really wanted to hold down that space and also the work that we were doing. And so we thought it would be useful to kind kind of lay homage to the people that we're trying to lift up, and also, the practices that we're trying to engage in. So this is one of them. The slides is.
This is a quote from Audre Lorde. "If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive."
When a cause comes along and you know it in your bones, yet refuse to defend it, at that moment you begin to die, and I've never seen so many corpses walking around talking about justice. That's Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Unless we know ourselves and our history and other people in their history, there is really no way that we can really have positive kind of interaction where there is real understanding. Yuri Kochiyama.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Asad Shakur.
And this is an excerpt from the Combahee River Collective statement, and they are a collective that we are really inspired by and hope that our work can, be in the same lineage of. So I'll share this quote. "A political contribution which we feel we have already made is the expansion of the feminist principle that the personal is political. In the practice of our politics, we do not believe that the end always justifies the means. Many reactionary and destructive acts have been done in the name of achieving correct political goals. As feminists, we do not want to mess over people in the name of politics. We believe in collective process and a non-hierarchical distribution of power within our own group and in our vision of a revolutionary society. We are committed to a continual examination of our politics as they develop through criticism and self-criticism as an essential aspect of our practice."
And right before we continue, really take note of them if you haven't heard about how many people have heard of the Combahee River Collective? Yes, oh, it's so lit. The rest of you, look at them. Love them. But I think this has been, as we've also kind of transformed from being like a documentary collaborative documentary project to becoming a collective, and as we kind of just continue this work, I think this part about learning and criticism and self-criticism has been really, really important as we transform and continue to learn in between each project. We've been working together for 5 years now, and really reflecting back it's important. And just also again homage to people who've come before and who we are trying to work in their lineages. And this collective, I think they're based out of Boston, and this was penned in 1974, and they were together being in community for, I think, from the 1969 till the mid 70s. And they were the ones who also coined that phrase, the personal is political. So they were a black feminist, lesbian collective, I think is what they self-identified as. So look them up, know their work, because you're probably already engaging in their principles and don't even know it.
And next, this is another clip that we always like to show. It's in dedication to our 5th member who is no longer with us, who passed really shortly after we began the project. So this is to pay homage to her. And her birthday...
It looks like some of them have messages.
Her birthday was just recently also, and the anniversary of her passing is tomorrow, actually. So.
It looks like some of them have messages on them. What was the thing that Jillian said? Something Forever Bay?
Forever Bay. Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, I'll say that.
Yes.
Forever Bay. Yeah, you guys are gonna make me cry.
She's probably doing some shit on other planes that for the greater goods that we don't even know about. I wish I was into the shit that she's into right now. It's she's probably seeing shit that I'm not seeing, so I want to see it on this plane though, you know.
I want to take a picture of this.
Okay. So now that everybody is in the room, so this is us. We're not going to read this. You could read this. This is our kind of like, we are continually referring, like coming back to our working mission statement and the way that we are thinking about our work. We're very like, you'll see, we do the most. We are doers, and we're trying to get better at figuring out how to talk about the work and how to describe what it is that we are trying to accomplish together. But just to, I mean, we can do it here too. So in the collective, there's 4 of us: Catherine, Tom, me, Tsagetfesa, Sonia Choi, who I think you'll see up in the corner there, Jasmine Jones, and our 5th member, June Kwan, who passed away at the start of this work together. And we're going to try to speed through because this was a 45-minute talk that we gave that we're trying to condense down. It's really hard. But this is kind of how we are starting to conceptualize what we've been doing. We've been trying to think about this work as different models of experimental models of community organizing. And so I talked a little bit about actually, do you want to go over the 4 and then I'll dive into it?
Yeah. So really quickly, our first summer, as we mentioned, we had a warehouse space which we called Bufu Studios, and we had it for a month, and the theme was really generally around Black and Asian futurity, coming off of our first trip for our documentary project. But in getting the space, we realized, I think we had initially programmed maybe 60 programs in the month, which was already a lot, but we really saw the need in our communities, especially like centering QTPOC, just the need for space. And so we kind of turned out our space to whoever wanted to use it, and we ended up with 116 programs by the end of that month. So that was that first summer. The summer after that, we did programming all over New York City, all across the 5 boroughs, also for 30 days, every day, in a different space, focusing on collective organizing strategies and sharing resources across collectives around nightlife, healing, art, political organizing collectives. Am I missing anything? I think that's yeah. Mm-hmm. And the summer after that, we had a residency at I-Beam, and we decided to have a residency within our residency, and we actually have the treat of having one of our I-Beam residents here, which is really exciting. So when we'll poke you in a little bit if you want to give a little spiel. And then also, we consider the documentary that we've been talking about as also another model of organizing, really thinking about how to deconstruct a documentary and not subscribe to traditional white supremacist ways of working in film. And and the school, which is coming up. That's our new model, which we did part of here. But we'll get into that in just a second.
Our time is so limited. Okay, so yes, so all of that work is really beautiful. And you know what, there's more pedagogical things later, but something that's really integral to how we think about building our different models. I mean, they're really like, usually, I think they function as like us trying to practice our ideology, really trying to embody our political ideals and trying to create, even though we don't have all the resources in the world to like build our actual, our residency program or to own our own space or necessarily have the funds to continue to have like a free school, we can at least, with the support of our community, build a model to think about what that would look like. And hopefully those things can activate and plant seeds for other people. And community agreements are actually a really key part of making sure that folks feel held and that the space that we're creating is actually, it's transformative and not just reperpetrating the same kind of violences that, if you don't necessarily keep these things in mind, will inherently happen just because of the world that we live in every single day. And we're going to speed through. All right. Well, this is us thinking. It's a spiral, and actually, this is from a presentation. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This is a spiral of us and some phrases. If you want to take a picture, we're not going to spend time on it really, but these are all these different ideas and things that we're pulling from, and people and concepts that are helping us to think and inform what we're doing. I really think of the work that we've been doing as kind of being the inevitable conclusion of the lives that we've been living and like the politics that like we've been like. We're nerds. We're political nerds. Like we're in constant states of learning and trying to grow. And so these are the kind of like touch points, things around accessibility, scamming resources, scamming for the homies, get as many people in for as much as you can, zooming in and zooming out, trying to think about these small, intimate, personal, political moments being, also reflective of larger moments and trying to connect them to larger movements and oh my gosh, there's so much there. And oh my God, responsive versus reactive I think is so key too. Really trying to build the alternatives we want to see and making sure that our work is continually responsive and not just reacting to the terrible political world that we live in. So, yes. Oh my gosh.
We don't have to explain.
Yeah.
So what are we at right now? All right. Okay. So we're gonna speed through. This is this is the calendar from the first month. So as you can see, there was maybe up to maybe 4 or 5 programs a day. We basically lived at this space, and these are images of different programs and different parts of the space, so you can get a feel for that. I feel like we don't need to. Yeah.
I mean, we'll just play with some names.
Oh, okay. This is a list of our collaborators. I'm gonna go down here. Oh wow, that's a lot.
I know. I wonder if it's just you don't need to go maybe it's just useful to name. We're not going to be able to list every single person that we've worked with on every single project, but I think it's really a fun and beautiful troll to look at, just for this 1 month in July in 2017. You're about to see, I think, damn near 100 different organizations and names that we worked with. So there they are.
And the images surrounding it are also from the US programming, which is the summer after that in 2017. In spaces, we were in rooftops, bars, museums, literally every kind of space. Well, these are the spaces, actually. That's another US video, so I feel like we can. I dream. Oh wow, here we are. Well, so as we mentioned before, we created a residency within our residency at iBeam where we put an open call out to our community, and we ended up with about 16 residents, a little more. And each week we would have a cohort of 4 to 6 people who came with specific projects related to the theme solidarity is possible but not inevitable. And at the end of that week, they would produce a public program. So these are our lovely residents, one of whom is right here. So we wanted to ask Allison to give us a little less than 30-second spiel about what they worked on.
I know. Sorry, Allison. Thank you, Allison.
Okay. I'm going to read notes so I sound smart. Yes, I was an alumnus of the iDream residency, and it was amazing. And I worked with Anissa Jackson right there, who is one of my close friends and very frequent collaborator. And we did a project really interested in a couple of guiding questions that I'm going to read off. I'm very nervous. 1, how is the digital archive shaped by things like displacement and trauma and diaspora? How do we access our collective memory when it's haunted from the outside? And how can we sort of emancipate our sense of archive from traditional modes of surveillance? And so there's a lot of big words. Oh shit, I left my notes. Basically interested in how memory sits in the body, and especially when that body is one that has been occupied by violence and trauma. And how do we sort of activate or access and exchange that memory as a form of collective healing? The end. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, we didn't know that, we didn't prep you, so we thank you and apologize. Yes, these are some of the responses from different residents. Yes. So also, I think it's fun and useful to note the fun. Like we paid each resident like a small, but I think kind of lit for a small stipend. And the money that came from that was a friend of ours who was working for a terrible corporation who funded things. Right before they left their job, they gave us a bunch of money, and and so again, like, take the monies that you have and give them to your friends to do great things, especially if you're going to leave your job. If anyone's leaving a foundation, let us know. This comes back to the documentary, and so very quickly, because we really want to get to the Wi-Fi school. The documentary is something that we've been shooting all over the world. We've shot in India, Japan, Korea, China, Ethiopia, Jamaica, around the States. I don't know if I'm missing any place. And it's this project we've been looking at Black and Asian cultural and political relationships, and it really birthed all of us coming together. And if you want to know more about it, you can look at our website or also talk to us, because we don't have a lot of time to get into it. But I really want to show this. Okay, yeah, so this is what if you want to go to the website, you'll get about, I think, like 40 minutes of clips on here, and we've shown them in different installations around the city, and hopefully, depending on some funding, you will be able to experience it in about 6 months. So you look out. But we're really trying to create and lift up a language of solidarity and relationship between our folks, and trying to lift up ways that we are entering each other's culture through genuine relationship versus like entering each other through capitalism and white supremacy, which is often what we see when we're looking at the violence that happens between different folks of color's relationship, and right now in our documentary specifically looking at Black and Asian folks. And it's very like, yeah, I feel like, let me show part of Nish because it's the shortest. We're going to show you a very short clip from the documentary. Looking at the relationship between Dalit folks, Dalit Panthers, and the Black Panthers, and Black folks.
Kshatriyas, warriors, Vaishyas, craftsmen, Shudras, laborers, and those excluded from the system altogether, Dalits, who I've noted as outcasts, spelled outcast. Is then why, like, the Dalit Panther Party will similar paradigm, then it ends up being something that.
So we have 2 minutes, so that's all you get. It's okay. It's our own thing. Maybe should we go to the calendar and then come back to this? Oh, man. All right. Well, the Wi-Fi school. This happened this summer. It was incredible. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, so similarly to the iDream residency, these classes were based on an open call. We put a call out to our community, and not just to folks in New York, but folks literally from wherever. Every Monday we had online classes, so people taught from different cities in other countries and from other places in the States. And we got these incredible submissions for classes. All of the classes were free, as we've mentioned, and held at different community spaces. So one was Radical Love Consciousness Space. Another space was Metaden in Ridgewood. Playground Coffee in Bed-Stuy. Fridays we took breaks if we could. And then we rotated between various community gardens in different boroughs, and then every Sunday we were here, and that was awesome. So yeah, these are some of the amazing class titles, and a bunch more info, and all of the online classes are on our website, so you can still fully access those. This is a meme that Gay made about the Wi-Fi school.
This is the first meme I've ever made. And I think it's really important to lift up that so much of the conceptualization and birthing of this school was in collaboration with Distributed Web of Care and Taeyun Choi, and funding from SFPC, the School of Poetic Computation. So this was really also one of those, like, get your friends and people who you love to help finesse money and support this kind of important work. Each teacher was paid a small stipend. In fact, we have a teacher too, and I want to show your video. Olivia, you're so cute, I love you.
We had 6 areas of study.
6 areas of study. There are these. Look on the website to read them and take them in. Also, there's an archive of videos from every single class that we are slowly but surely uploading onto our website, so you can take a look and try to experience a little bits and pieces of all of these. Maybe we'll just show this video, our graduation video, and close. Cool.
They keep talking about the cloud. There's no cloud.
Right.
There's literally no cloud. The cloud's like on land, in water, and like little fish swimming by the internet. They're swimming by like, if you're like streaming porn, there are little fish swimming by. It's like black bodies that jump the ship on their way to Barbados and on their way to the Caribbean. They're still there chilling with the internet. Like, it's all very, very material and very physical.
So I have like anxiety dreams about like my shit getting like my main profile and like my other profiles getting deleted, and feeling this dread and like separation and dissociation of feeling like who I am is so largely intertwined with technology, like that theory of like intertwining our bodies with technology, which can be such a beautiful thing, but it can also be so scary, because if your shit gets deleted, if the database, if the farms of data are destroyed, then I think most people would have this sense of losing themselves and losing a part of themselves. It feels like somebody's cutting a phantom limb off of you. Yeah, because like social death.
A lot of us have data trauma. There's so much that we as POC, as queer people, have to unpack when it comes to data trauma. So I want to take a moment for like everyone to just like understand that this is a real thing. Because there's birth doulas and there's like death doulas. Like there's people who help us with those transitions, right? So like when it comes to like techno doula, like the people who are like stewarding, like people having like these positive relationships with technology, right? Stewarding, having a relationship with technology that can mirror our relationships with the land, that can mirror our relationships with other people, right? To get back to that like peaceful neutrality that like non-violent is.
Olivia's dope. And we're gonna close with this because I know we're out, over time. This is a small compilation of at the end of our summer we did. You'll hear the numbers, but I think it's like 65 classes, 71 teachers from all over, in many boroughs around 4 different continents. People taught classes from, but this is the graduation ceremony that we had a couple weeks ago to give certificates to everybody. Everyone wrote their own degrees, and we clapped and gave speeches. Valedictorians gave speeches. It was great. There was a choir. The choir is incredible. Oh, no, it's not in this one. The choir is so lit, y'all. Come back to the website. Wi-Fi choir.
My esteemed family, welcome to Wi-Fi graduation! 4 months ago, Bufu invited us to dream of an alternative learning, dreaming, skating space, also known as the Wi-Fi School. I don't know, we dreamed of completing 64 classes with 71 teachers and 10 community spaces across New York City, with online classes taught across 4 continents, but here we are.
We are all believing in the idea that we're all gonna survive the apocalypse, and having really putting energy and capital into the revolutionary imagination. You guys taught me that. I didn't learn that in freaking English class.
This is a school, but I feel like it's also like a hospital of some sort, because like y'all really saving lives here. So I'm eternally grateful and honored to even be up here in front of all y'all presents right now, like honestly. And I love every single one of y'all.
When we do what we were meant to do, which is be together and learn from each other, things start happening so rapidly.
Thank you for calling me, crying in the middle of the night, saying that you wanted to start a book club, and then coming back a month later saying that it was a 6-week school. Which I should have known better. What I watched happen was this muscle that has been developing since that first year build into like a really tangible practice, and a muscle that was decentralized, where people who had popped in either for one workshop or for years pick up the tools that they were leaving behind and start exercising them in their own ways.
We don't even realize yet how like major and how historic this is, but I think like we're gonna look back at this and be like, wow, like we were so fucking lit.
Woo! The class of infinity. Yeah. Any final? Thanks, y'all. Build things, care about your friends. I don't know. Yeah.
So one question.
Make it good.
When's the next semester start?
No, I think that's such a good. I mean, well, it's probably not going to happen. Yeah, I mean, for each, so we do these different models. So, we're gonna. But we were hoping, that because we're really intentional about like each of the people schools we partnered with, that people would hopefully continue and like do other things. Like, hey, SFPC is here, or Radical Love Learning Network is here, or like Playground Coffee Shop's always doing workshops, and they're like, it's like Brooklyn-owned folks who really care about their community. So hopefully, because every year we're partnering with so many different organizations and people, it can also be like seeding for folks where it's like, we might not be doing that same work next year, but there are lots of places to invest in to continue doing that kind of stuff. We have other things coming up, so keep an eye out. Yeah. Thank you.
So our next speaker, Adel Rodriguez, I met at a conference, and is one of these people who you know their work before you meet them. Their images are like burned in your brain. And Adel's one of these people where as soon as he started to speak and show his work, I recognize so many things, and I feel like you're the poet that this time needs. So. Yeah, I hope that's a good. No pressure.
All right.
Yeah.
The poet
How do we
needs
get
his laptop.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. Let's get you plugged in. Yeah. How's everybody doing? Good. Yeah. So happy you're here. Oh, also, quick plug. What time Sunday? Sunday? Sunday, if you like hanging out in a room with a lot of people. Oh, yeah, you're good. You're good. I felt it. I thought I was falling. We're having a Meet the Students event, which is another thing that we do at the beginning of that first week. It's a lovely event. You've seen some of these people on the screen. You get to hear from the people who are here for this 10-week program. And it's, really special moment. So encourage you to come on Sunday. And then also we'll have a final event for this 10-week program. So please, pay attention to all those things.
All right. Is this yours?
Yeah.
All right. Hi. My name is Adel Rodriguez. I'm an artist, writer. I do a lot of different kinds of projects. And the last time I coded was in 1985 in 7th grade, and that was also the last time I coded something. So, but hopefully through some of the things I'm going to show here, it will show sort of a little bit about how my brain works a little bit, which sometimes has a lot in common with coding. This is when I was a kid. I grew up in Cuba, and this is me in my uncle's military uniform, and over there I'm in my school uniform, and we were all sort of trained to be little Che Guevaras. These are some of the graphics that I grew up around in the countryside where I lived. So you had these slogans, big sort of political statements, things that say like socialism or death is pretty impactful to an 8-year-old. But at the same time, my father over there, Elvis, he really didn't like the government at all. He couldn't stand it. And one of the things that he did is he would go to Havana and he got his hands on foreign magazines, and he ripped out all the advertising from the foreign magazines and pasted them up in the back of the house and created this big billboard of advertising and foreign graphics. And then people would come over from the town to take pictures of themselves in front of these very luxurious things that we could never have in Cuba. So that's one of the first times that I remember seeing typography, design, things of that sort. And also the idea that, everything you do in Cuba is a bit of a risk. And to him, that was a risk worth taking. This is my family's farm, which is where we would all get together every other weekend or so. And that's me in the front. And, I think we were about 50 family members, but of this entire picture, within a year of this picture, almost everybody was gone from the island. Part of the reason is we couldn't stand the politics there. It was very difficult to live in Cuba at that time. So there was something called the Mariel boat lift that allowed us all to leave legally. Castro said anybody that's here is an enemy of the people. And we don't want you here. You're scum. You're worms. Get out. So that's me over here, my dad, my sister on this boat, and over there. These are photographs that were taken by a journalist who about 15 years later I met while I was working at Time Magazine, just through conversation with people. He looked at me, looked at my eyes, and like, I think I took pictures of you in 1980. And he came to me with these photographs. So it's kind of strange how life sort of has this weird circle happening. This is another photographer that I found recently through the internet that was also on the boat. There were about 8 journalists that were thrown out of Cuba, American journalists that were covering this boat lift. They were thrown out, and all these journalists ended up on our boat to leave. So it was one of the most covered boats of that boat lift. So overnight, as a kid, I went from this kind of graphics, these revolutionary kind of graphics, to these kinds of graphics. So my head as a child was between these two things, between communism and capitalism, between Che and Kiss, between some sort of rapping in Cuba, and then like bubble rap, bubble gum. When I came here, I became very fascinated by graphics of America. As you can tell, that's me on drums. We would do these little parties for the family. So like whenever they had the Cuban salsa party, we'd be like, oh no, not them, doing their thing. Can we do rock and roll? And they're like, fine, you can do it after the salsa party. So after the salsa party's over, we'd come out with our, handmade, like this is all painted boxes. We would paint the boxes. The symbols were like hubcaps from cars, and we would jam out to American rock and roll. And of course, my family would think that we just made a really horrible decision coming to America, 'cause look what's happening to our kids. These are some paintings from college. I went to Pratt Institute, and right from the beginning, when I was at Pratt, I was always about putting many different things down and seeing connections between these various things. So these are some early paintings. I continued that. These are 8 paintings from about 2012. What I tend to do as an artist is I find one thing that I'm really kind of obsessed with, and I just squeeze everything I can out of that idea. And what I liked about meeting Zach is he does the exact same thing. It's this idea that you've landed on one thing, just do it this way, that way. I tell my students it's almost like a movie director. You've got a shot, shoot it from here, shoot it from the side, go above, go down. Try to squeeze it out till you're just exhausted from all the different possibilities. This is one example. So I ended up doing maybe about 30 images like this, and this all started with a what if. I'm like, what if I just put shapes on a piece of paper? So I would paint 40 different shapes. I would cut them out, so then I'd have 40 separate shapes, and I start putting them back together into a collage, and whatever came out of that collage were these images. So when I started, I had no idea what I was going to make or what the image was going to be like. I let it happen from the pieces that I was bringing together. In general, I don't plan anything. I don't plan what I'm doing next year or the year after, a 5-year plan. No, I just sort of go on a day-to-day basis on what I'm obsessed about at that time. These are some other paintings. So this way of these graphics evolved out of this. This is collage, but then I felt really at ease with it, so I started painting these graphics. This is another series that I did, which was a what if. What if I drew something, but it was all just with white dots? So instead of a line work, it was all dot, 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 and I created this series of white dot paintings. And this is another series that I did, which was all about dots in many different, from small dots to big dots, trying to create faces. And I did it first in color, and then I'm like, well, what if I do it in black and white? So that's another thing you can change from color to black, change backgrounds, things like that. These are some other paintings. And then I also things that pop into my head. What if I do sculptures in Central Park and they're bombs? I don't know. It would not be approved. So this is my studio, and as you can see, there's a lot of things going on. There's paintings, sculptures. I'm still painting on boxes like when I was 8 years old, doing a KISS thing. this is sort of like what I idea. This is the first flash of an idea. I get it. It pops into my head from some random place that it's hard to figure out, and then I just jot things down really fast before they escape my head. So at that time, I was thinking about sort of corporate fascism, boxes. Since I was working in boxes, I was seeing these boxes had all these graphics from FedEx, Home Depot, and then realizing that as I'm working with these boxes, these are the same companies that are sort of destroying us in a way. FedEx is delivering the guns that kill the kids in the schools. American Airlines, a corporation, is shipping the kids from the border to Chicago to foster care. So I started thinking about how corporations and logos and the work that many of us do as typographers and letterers, how that work gets used at its end state. And many times it's to promote a company that is always not doing the best work for us. So this is a quick sketch. This is a little bit more developed. I was trying to figure it all out, and then I started building it. So this piece is about it's 8 feet by 12 feet of stacked up boxes with my posters glued on, painted on, with other smaller compartments with these faces. Some of the graphics, this is a poster that I created, and I just pasted on the box. I'm more into maximalism and not really minimalism. If there was a movement that I belonged to. The Apple logo with the terrorist symbol, as it got into my head, we have ISIS and all these groups, they're really communicating through Apple phones and things like that. So this idea how technology has become a bit of a terrorist tool as well. This is from an American Girl catalog from my kids. But one of the things that I've become most known for is magazine covers. I've done probably about 150 different magazine covers. These are a few of them. I worked at Time magazine for about 13 years as an art director. And then I left about 10 years ago to be a freelancer and do my own work. The first time that I saw that a magazine cover could have a lot of impact was when I did this cover for Communication Arts in 2005. It created a lot of controversy online, and at that time it was just on blogs, but a lot of discussion, fighting between communist groups and other people. But I saw, posters have even more impact. I mean, magazines have even more impact than posters sometimes because it goes to such a bigger audience. Then in about 2014, I was watching what was happening in the Middle East. I tend, if I see a story that's not getting enough attention, that we're kind of just ignoring, I get very obsessed with it, almost like I want to grab it and put it in people's faces. So this idea that what was happening to the Yazidi woman in Syria and what ISIS was doing and things like that, and how it was spreading, it wasn't getting enough attention. So I started creating these graphics and putting them online, almost like about once a day. The idea that these people had gotten to the point where they were taking selfies with the beheadings, because I saw that on the news, and that in my social media feed, I follow a lot of news, so I would be watching beheading in Syria, and then my mom's birthday, and then another killing, and then someone else doing cute pictures. So that whole, what happens in social media is all these ideas start sort of blending together, and then for me, I started making images of these blends and then putting them back out, and they started getting a lot of attention. People started noticing, and part of it was I wanted the media to cover it and show it with as much seriousness as I thought it deserved. So after I did all of these, I created posters and I started putting them up around the city, around New York City, in Chelsea, and in Times Square, and places like that. But so here you have a combination. These are the kind of moments that I'm looking for when I put up posters. He was there watching a movie for about half an hour and not really noticing what was behind him, which is what I was trying to get that point across, which is what we're doing. These things are happening, and we're so consumed in our own personal space that we're not paying attention to what's happening out there. But after that series, I started seeing what was happening here in the U.S., and I started seeing the extremism here. This was in about 2015, when sort of the whispers or the rumors of something that could happen was just happening. Like Trump was he wasn't even a candidate yet. He was running for president, which I thought was a total joke at the time. But the white extremism, to me, it's the same or even worse, because ISIS doesn't really affect me that much. But a white terrorist could, kill all of us anytime. Where it's much closer to us. So I started finding connections between the two, and then at some point, I think it was about 2016. Time magazine started, noticing what I was doing online. With all this imagery, and I was doing some other images of Trump as well. This is a sort of a sketch of what I was thinking for a Trump image. And I wanted to do something very clear, graphic, and also something that would become a bit of a brand. So that once I created this image of Trump, it would then you could easily understand what the image is about. Anytime I did an image, you get the connection right away. So you get that in about half a second, and then you have another 2 or 3 seconds to understand what I'm saying with the image, because that's what I feel we have a lot of times nowadays, especially online. If you're going through Twitter or anything, you really need something that communicates that quickly, and that's what I was trying to do. So I created this cover for Time magazine. It's called, they titled it Meltdown, and then this was about, I think about 2 months before the election of 2016. So this came out because he had done some crazy thing back then. And then about 2 weeks before the election, the tape came out that he had grabbed women and all this. So it looked like his campaign was totally over. And I created this cover. Part of the reason it was, it got so much attention is that magazines don't usually cover politicians in this way. And I felt that prior to this cover, I had spent about a year online just putting my own renditions of Trump and sort of being very critical of this candidate. And part of what I wanted is I wanted it to get picked up by bigger media, by Time or other magazines. And when they finally called, I'm like, yes, finally I got the call, because I having worked at a magazine, I understand how going that strong on a candidate is a very difficult thing to pull off for many different reasons. You basically, as the news media, you want to be fair to both sides, but I, as an individual, felt like this wasn't like a time to do that, because you can't have sort of like have equal time for fascists. So it was nice to see that the media got that. But because it was so shocking that the magazine would do that, it started popping up everywhere on magazine covers. That guy painted it on a menu board downtown. She painted it on her nails and sent it to me. So I started seeing how things can go viral in many different ways. And about 2 weeks before the election, I kind of went nuts and decided, I gotta show this to people. So I made about 100 spray painted posters. And I took these out, here's a bunch of them, all done by hand, and took them around the city and started pasting them up. I brought one to the Trump hotel downtown, and I put it on their coffee table and left. I brought it to Times Square. So this is how things go from one thing to, like I said, I take one thing and I squeeze as much juice as I can out of it. So I made all of these, and then from this image, then I put this online, and then this started getting shared quite a bit. And what I liked is that all the people down there were from Mexico, and they loved doing this for free. So they didn't charge. And then I think finally Trump got elected, and about a week into his presidency, the first thing he did is ban Muslims from coming to America. So in my head, these two things came together: the terrorist, extremist, and Trump. And I basically just took an old image I had of an ISIS terrorist from like 3 years earlier and put Trump's head on it and holding Statue of Liberty. And I put this online on my Twitter feed, and it got a lot of attention. Then a couple of days later, Der Spiegel magazine reached out to me to do a cover, and the sketches that I was doing weren't working out. So they were just looking through my Twitter feed, and they're like, hey, we see this on your Twitter feed. Can we publish this? And I'm like, are you crazy? You're going to publish that? They're like, yes, we love it. Well, it's because you're in Germany. So they went ahead and like, all they did is they asked me, can you make it look more like Trump? So put a suit on him and a tie and all that. So I did this cover for them. And then this became a really big media sensation and started going everywhere. I had a lot of news people come to my studio, do interviews about it. I got a lot of, threats from people, all sorts of things. So this image is there. Here it is. It went online at 6 p.m. on Friday, just online. And Saturday morning, people had printed it out, and they had it at protests. Here, this is at the Stonewall Inn, and the people were taking it to airports to protest the Muslim ban and all sorts of things. So I started seeing that once you do something, it has a variety of its own. People just grab onto it, and I encourage it. So here's some people. This is me. I ended up in a TV show in Germany with all the covers that I created. I got a lot of friends. So many new friends. Yeah, this guy was like on Instagram or something. Adel, you're a pathetic traitor to the United States. You would have been summarily hung. Hopefully similar as, rock on, asshole. That was nice. That's a nice ender. I collect these, and I've got, I don't know, about 50 of them, and hopefully I'll be putting some into my book that's coming out in a couple of years. Here it is, a poster that I put up on the Lower East Side, and what was funny about this one is when I put it up, I was just going around the Lower East Side putting up posters, and this seemed like a good wall. And then I walked about a block over, putting another poster, and a few guys came around me, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm putting up posters. And they're like, we're the police. So they were dressed like you guys, like they were undercover after the poster artist. And they're like, well, you can't do that. We might arrest you. Well, give us your ID. So I gave him like my license, my SVA ID, all sorts of ID. And they're like, you can't paste on these walls because this is private property. So this is private property. And then another cop said, yeah, pretty much all of New York City is private property, so you can't really put anything up. I'm like, all right, so we're not going to arrest you, but you got to stop doing this. I'm like, okay. And as I'm leaving, one of the guys says, hey, can I have a poster? and I'm like, serious? And like it was like a deal, like give me the poster or else. So I'm like, all right, man. I reach for the poster, and he's like, no, not that one. Give me one without glue. I'm like, okay. I go to my car, put a new one, and then when I go to give him, he says, can you sign it for me? And I said, no, I'm not gonna sign it. You can have it. So I gave him the poster, and I just got out of there. But anyways, so as things work, this experience is what created all the box poster things that I've been doing now, because I thought in my head, like I'm like a river, like it's going down, you have a blockage, it doesn't let you do something. You go, okay, I want to go this way. You can't do that, I go this way. So since I can't do that, then I decided, okay, what if I just put posters on boxes and then put them next to the trash? I'm just putting trash out. I can't get arrested for recycling. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm putting posters on boxes, doing stacks of boxes, putting them on a street, and that's it. And I won't get arrested. Because if I get arrested, my last name is Rodriguez, and they'll ship me somewhere. So here's some more stuff. These are just some, this I put up online, and I thought, oh God, this is so wrong. And then I go, oh, then I got to put it up. So that's how my brain works. If I think something's really bad, and I'm like, you get that feeling like tingly that it's just kind of wrong. So and then Der Spiegel saw it, and then they wanted to publish it. So it's that's what's great about the internet is self-publishing is the best thing in the world, because you don't have someone saying you can't do that, we won't publish that. You just go, okay, well, I'll do it, you know. So this is another one that I did. I don't know what was happening at that time, but I put this up online. My mom called me, and she said, "Why are you doing that? That's the president. You can't do that." So I unfriended her. And yeah, she has no right to look at my work, or she's gonna give me a hard time. So and then I made this one, and I called her, and I said, I put some clothes on him. This is another one. We're just walking, saw that in the street, and then I made the connection. So I started seeing Trump everywhere. I got this idea to do stickers and just show up at the market and put them on peaches. This might actually be made by White and Kennedy as a thing. I've talked to them. This is another one. Then the idea, once you have the brand, is you can really expand it and test if people can understand what you're saying, and they recognize it. And people do. I was surprised by this one. Then this is a poster for, it was done for a protest about what was happening to the kids. This is a little time cover. And time covers are getting animated now, so this one worked out well. They were actually very proud that they were destroying the United States, so Trump Jr. posted this on his page, because he liked it, apparently. This is from the summer of Charlotte in Virginia. I'm sorry, I get them all mixed up now. Right after the Nazi protests and all that. Those two came out. I did a series of silk screens and started pasting them around. And this is Tide. So yeah, my brain works weird like that. Like I'm really fascinated with corporate graphics and then just changing it up. I did this, and then my mom called me again, and she's like, "How did you get those boxes of fascism in the supermarket?" She thought it was real. And then my dad's like, "Can't you get arrested for bringing boxes of fascism to the market?" And I'm like, "Dad, it's Photoshop." This is to give you an idea how you get to one cover. So I've got, I don't know, 21 sketches for one cover. So that's the idea of continually squeeze things out and see what happens. This is the reversed evolution. And then the other thing that happened was people say, well, no one's going to hire you now because of you're doing so many political graphics and all this. Like clients won't, corporations won't want to hire you. So here's this company that does alternative energy hired me in England to do billboards with this sort of character. And that's what the billboard looks inside the tube. And then the final is of this project is these how they're used in protests. This little kid drew that one. This was a Der Spiegel cover. He copied it and did it as a poster that was bringing to a protest. This is in England. I put up all my images online around protests, and I say you can download them and make posters or anything that you want to bring to protests. You can print them and for free, and then send me photos if you can. So people send me photos. These are some of the people that have sent me photographs of themselves with my artwork at protests. And this is an exhibit that was at White and Kennedy in Portland. They've been very supportive of my work and of showing it. This is their entire lobby in Portland, and their clients go through there, and we had a big opening there and everything. So. Oh, they asked me if there's anything that I wanted to do for the opening. I said, yeah, I want to make a piñata. But I didn't have time, and they're like, we'll do it. So that's White and Kennedy. You just tell them anything, and they'll do it. And this was about 5 feet tall piñata that was hanging, and then we busted it open. They asked me what I wanted to fill it with, and I said Cheetos. So it was all over the gallery floor by the end. And this is the latest Time cover. that came out this week. So that's the Trump work, and then here's some other graphics. That all that stuff created, caused other people to hire me. So the band U2 asked me to do political posters that would be displayed at the at their shows when the crowd was getting there. So these are some of my graphics at the shows. This is at Madison Square Garden. I'm not sure which stadium this is, but these are a couple of them. This is a cage that then opens up and the band is in there. This is during one of their performances. And then the final project that I'm sharing here is after I did all of that, WeTransfer got in touch and they're like, well, you can, we'll sponsor you to do anything you want to do. Is there anything you want to do? And there's one idea that I had for a project that I've been wanting to do for many years, which was just to go back to my hometown in Cuba and paint my friends and family. Like no big to-do, just me in my town at my house painting people. So I went there 2 months ago, and this is my hometown. This is on a tractor ride through town. I'm heading to my friend Tomas's farm right up that road on the right there. So these are the farms and the streets that I grew up on. This is my godmother. This is me painting my godmother in her garden. So I was in my town for 2 weeks. This is with my neighbor Nilda. This is my best friend Yayo and my cousin Evelito. And then all of these portraits, there's about 30 of them, where I had a show at the end. I just decided to do a show on the porch. So people from town just came to look at this show. And then when I got back, I sent them all to WeTransfer. And now when you go to WeTransfer to just send the file, all of a sudden you see this, So I like that combination of technology and humanity. And that's what I was trying to do with this project, that you click on here, and then this takes you to a full story written by a reporter, a friend of mine, Rebecca Sanchez. She did a great job living with my family and writing all about what happened there. So in the work that I do here in the U.S. and also in this thing that I've done with Cuba, there's always like a bit of risk, and I get excited about risk. I know that it's dangerous, and it can be problematic. I'm not stupid. I know I'm very aware of my security, my safety, but I didn't leave all these people behind to come here and shut up. So I came here to speak up and to do whatever art pops into my head at any time. But in these situations, going back to Cuba, writing a story about what's happening there is risk. Anything can happen. They can take me, and then the American government could say, well, we don't know him. So, but that is part of what we do as artists, is always take a risk, And when I was in Germany, after a talk at Der Spiegel, there's one man stood up to ask questions, and he said, well, what's going to happen to you now? Because I was in Germany. He thought that I was not going to be allowed back in the United States. And I started to think about that, because it was always in the back of my mind, and I thought, well, if I can't do this, what's the purpose? If I can't just do what I want to do, what would be the purpose? So that's what I told him. Whatever happens, happens. And then I looked up Martin Luther King, because he's one of my favorite people. And he wrote, or he talked about this in one of his speeches in Selma, about the idea that if you're not speaking up, you might as well be dead. You might as well. What's the purpose of living, kind of thing. So let me see if this shows up.
Deep down in our nonviolent creed is the conviction that there are some things so dear, some things so precious, some things so eternally true that they're worth dying for. And if a man happens to be 36 years old, as I happen to be, and some great truth stands before the door of his life, some great opportunity to stand up for that which is right, He's afraid his home will get bombed. He's afraid that he will lose his job. He's afraid that he will get shot or beat down by state troopers. He may go on and live until he's 80. But he's just as dead at 36 as he would be at 80, and the cessation of breathing in his life is merely the belated announcement of an earlier death of the spirit. He died. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true. So we're going to stand up right here amid horses. We're going to stand up right here in Alabama amid the billy clubs. We're going to stand up right here in Alabama amid police dogs if they have them. We're going to stand up amid tear gas. We're going to stand up amid anything that they can muster up, letting the world know that we are determined to be free.
Thanks. Yeah.
One thing that just reminded me a lot of was that I've been kind of like somewhat following the Hong Kong protests, and like if you see like a lot of like grassroots like graphic designers and people are designing like these posters for protesting and like dissemination on like Telegram to like spread a message through like digital art specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one thing we can't change. If people ask me, "What do you think you're going to change something?" I'm like, I don't know if I can change, but I'm helping people communicate, and I'm helping people understand. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. That my goal is not to change something per se, because I don't know if I can do that, but I can do two things. Is I can make people feel that they're not alone when they see my work. They realize that someone else is thinking the same thing, because when someone's trying to gaslight you, the best thing is when someone goes, "Hey, I get it too. We're not both blind." So that's one thing. And the second thing is to keep a record. I don't know what will happen in 5 years, in 10 years. I don't know what this country will be. But I'm damn happy that someone in 1930 in Germany was making art opposing Hitler and the Nazis, and that's inspiring me now. So if maybe in 50 years my work inspires someone else, that's worth it, I think. Thank you.
Take that seat over there.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Last but not least, and this is a special guest of ours, and we asked Netta Bomani, who was our student a while ago, just a year ago, right? Just a year ago, and then also organizer for our new program that happened in Detroit, and we asked her to just share really briefly about what happened there. And this year we had a 1-week session in Detroit and also in Yamaguchi in Japan, and today we'll focus on the Detroit program. Netta?
Hi. Hi, everyone. So I noticed there's some people standing in the back. I think there's some space up here, so if you want to come forward, there's like some space to sit forward. Can y'all hear me? Is it on? Can y'all? Okay, I can't hear myself. All right, so I was asked to speak about what we did this summer in Detroit. As Taeyun said, I was a student with the School for Poetic Computation in the fall of September of 2018, and I've recently come back to work with the school to develop curriculum and to do this program that we did in Detroit. And it's a unique program in that it's the first time, one of the first times that the School for Poetic Computation has done a program outside of New York. And also, it's one of the first programs that we were able to provide for on a sliding scale from $0 to $500. And so this was, yeah, that's definitely something to clap for. And so I sort of see this as like an extension and a continuation of something like the Wi-Fi school, where we're giving people who are a part of underrepresented communities that I'm a part of, Black and brown communities, queer communities, to have access to a lot of the knowledge production that is happening in spaces like the School for Poetic Computation. And that's definitely something that I want to acknowledge as somebody who is Black. I don't really see a lot of people in this room and in other tech spaces that look like me, and this program is sort of to combat that. And so a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is the people that were involved in that. And we sort of all came together and all coalesced under this theme of uncovering technology, which was developed by Melanie Hoff, one of the organizers of Poetic Computation Detroit. And really what uncovering technology was about from my perspective is really about unpeeling these layers of abstraction between technology, machines, computers that really confuse our relationship with them. They complicate our relationship with them. And sort of like it's about reasserting our boundaries and reasserting our interactions with the computer and knowing what's really going on. And that sounds a lot like relationships to me. And so I think our theme had that kind of intimacy towards it. And so for the scope of this very brief presentation, I won't be getting too much into the curriculum, but I do want to acknowledge all the people that were involved, and I'm just going to go ahead and say them by name. The students: Antoine Scott, Carlo Sugatan, Stephen Song, Jess Rodgner, Katie Dresner, Samantha Griffith, Stefan Thompson, Felix Rucker, Tyrone Clemens, Chen Lee, Gerald Flint, Kristen Rose, Brooke Hawkins, Kristen Carthers, Daniel Aubert, Andrea Cardinal, Ron Waters, Janice Gates, Tawana Petty, Russell Stewart, Wesley Taylor, Kristen Lee, Ann Hae Young, Nabil Hussain, American artist, Colin Wong, Ritu Gaya, Melanie Hoff, Taeyun Choi, Lauren Gardner, and myself, Netta Bomani. And so I'm going to walk you through, I'm just going to show you a bunch of pictures because I really don't think there's anything that I can say to sort of encapsulate this very beautiful and rich experience that we all went through this summer. But I'm going to try to walk you through it from an oral history perspective, which was basically my task as of the person in charge of outreach. And I kind of decided to approach it from an oral history perspective and documenting everyone's experiences, interviewing them, talking to them. And we all sort of met at this place called the Talking Dolls. And the Talking Dolls is this experimental, artist-run, predominantly Black and brown owned studio in Detroit. And they sort of built this classroom for us several months before, maybe 2 or 3 months before the session was to start. And all the teachers sort of prepped this classroom. We created this U shape of computers. All of these are Raspberry Pi computers, very affordable computers, $35 each. And then there's monitors, and then there's keyboards and mouses attached to them. And Taeyun and Melanie prepared all of the Raspberry Pi computers for each of the students, which they got to keep along with the monitors and the keyboards afterwards. And I think this is a really important distinction to make because many people in Detroit don't have access to their own desktop computers and laptops as well. And some of our students, this was the first computer that they owned. And on Sunday, before we started the curriculum, we all got together and we had a barbecue. We tried to get to know each other just on a person-to-person level before we were trying to learn together in a classroom. And these are all the students of the class of 2019. And on the first day, this amazing person named Tawana Petty came in, and she basically set the foundation for the classes. She gave a lecture which I titled Detroiters Want to Be Seen, Not Watched, which she basically outlined her activism and her organizing around fighting against the surveillance apparatus in Detroit. And something that's happening in Detroit, it's happening in many other cities in North America, it's also happening in Hong Kong and other places globally, is this sort of entrenching over encompassing ubiquitous surveillance technologies that are taking over the city. And in Detroit, they have one called Project Greenlight, which is essentially how local business owners sort of have been swindled into paying the police department to install these cameras that have green lights attached to them to keep their communities safe, to prevent lootings, riots, that sort of thing. And Tawana sort of does this activism or this organizing around talking about how surveillance is conflated with safety, and that's not the same thing. And so she talked to us about that. And I really want to hold this quote there because I'll come back to it in the end, but Detroiters want to be seen, not watched, is something that really reverberated with all of us throughout the program. And so after Tawana, another teacher, Nabil, who is also a former, I see Nabil back there, hey Nabil, taught a class called An Introduction to Social Computing. And this class was a very brief but also deep history about the social and ecological impacts of computing and how that informs the social dimension of our lives. And that sort of like laid the groundwork for critical thinking and interacting and interfacing with the computers in the classroom. And as you can see, this is Nabil in the classroom talking about computational history and art. And then the next teacher was Melanie. Melanie's also here. See Melanie back there. And they taught a class called Peer-to-Peer Folder Poetry. And this was a class about essentially rethinking how we name programming. Like, what is programming actually? And I think something that really stuck with me from Melanie's class is that anybody who has ever interacted with one of these kinds of computers, like a laptop computer, or like one of these kinds of computers, like a smartphone, is always already programming. Just by clicking something, that's the same thing as entering a command into a terminal. And I think that was really illuminating for a lot of the students because they didn't necessarily, and myself included, didn't necessarily think that I was a programmer because I only think of programming in this like very, matrix, green text, hacker kind of way, and that's definitely not how we should think about it, in my opinion. And so this is a student, this is Kristen, showing one of the folder poems that she made in class. And then another teacher who taught, Ann Hae-young, I don't know if Ann is here tonight, but Ann is also New York based, and she taught a class called the Workers' Inquiry, and another class called Building Collective Power. And these two classes were really about looking at hardware and electronics from a socialist or a Marxist perspective. And so in Ann's class, most of the workshops were surrounding building batteries through non-conventional means like lemons were used in this class to build batteries, and we use things like copper to sort of make the connections between the Raspberry Pis and the lemons and then the other hardware. And then another teacher was Colin, who taught the Making Sense class. This was another hardware class. And in Colin's class, we actually connected what we learned in Ann's class to the Raspberry Pi. And we went through several exercises together. And then American Artist, who is also here, I see American right there, taught a class called Below the University and Beyond Technology. And their class was essentially, it was a critical theory class, and it was also a reading group. And we read many texts in that class, but one of the texts that I'll highlight is a chapter in the Undercommons by Fred Moten and Stefano Harney called The Only Possible Relationship to the University is a Criminal One. And then finally, our Detroit-based teachers, Andrea Cardinal and Daniel Albert, taught a class called the Exposed Surveillance Art Build class. And I want to bring this quote back, which is, Detroiters want to be seen, not watched, and take that into how the class transformed into this sort of DIY, sort of like anarchist space where we were all making posters and making banners and working from stencils, making our own stencils, working off stencils that they gave us to essentially make a response to the lecture that Tawana gave in class. So it wasn't that we just listened to something and then we were all really angry, and we were all thinking really critically about surveillance, but we actually created banners that went into a banner lending library in Detroit for people who want to protest this to use in future actions. And so we pulled screens. As you can see, that's Gerald, and then that's Anne and Chen, and then that's myself and Antoine. We're all kind of really focused and working on these prints. And we made a ton of prints. We made these mini banners that read, "Surveillance is not safety," "Ban facial recognition technology." And here is I really like this photo. It's kind of like a for loop of all the surveillance is not safety banners. And this is one of the larger banners that was painted by Stefan, Brooke, Sam, and Jess. And then this all sort of culminated into 2 events. And the first event was the Meet the Teacher Salon. We invited another half of the Detroit Community Technology Project, one of Tawana's collaborators, Janice Gates, to come basically speak about the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition and also the Equitable Internet Initiative in Detroit, which is basically responsible for building the mesh network, the free internet that's being provided to 40% of Detroiters who don't have access to internet. And then we also hung up the banner that we created in our class. And this is at the Jam Handy in Detroit. And then we had the student showcase where all the students were invited to give short presentations about their experiences and any mini class projects that they had in they made in our session. And we also conducted a series of interviews. I conducted many interviews with over half the students to sort of like build this oral history zine. And that sort of culminated into a zine making party that we had at this studio called Takeout, which was a project of 2 students in our cohort. And we all came together. That's Taeyoon, and then that's Kristen, and then that's Gerald, myself, Nabil, and American. And we all just knocked out over 100 zines. Actually, I think it was 400 zines that we made to be distributed at the student showcase on Sunday. And these are some of the mini zines that were inside the magazine. And then this is the package that we basically gave out to everybody at the showcase. And Taeyoon designed the posters in the back that say network and relation. And these were class projects, so this is a zine that came out of American's class, the critical theory of computation in Detroit. And then there are several mini posters from the actual banners that we made. And then there's Melanie's folder poetry zine, which features folder poems from all the students in the class. And then there's a mini zine that holds one of the interviews, one of 4 group interviews, pair interviews that I conducted. And this is still an ongoing project, and I think that all of this curriculum is an ongoing project, and I just wanted to share some of the things that we did, and that's pretty much it.
I think the funders. Yeah, I think, thanks, Nita. I think just want to add that this was a really huge collaboration project with support from the Knight Foundation Art and Technology Grant and a lot of generosity of the Detroit communities. So we hope to do that again. And also, something like this might be in the future for us in next year or the next few years from now. So talk to us if you're interested in helping and being part of it. And I'm also selling some T-shirts for the school. So if I'm all the way at the back, so just come find us. We have a few stickers and also the zines. We actually have them here if you want to check them out.
Thanks, y'all.
Let's give a big hand to all of our speakers. And thank you for coming. And remember your homework assignment. You met some new friends, so now get to know them. Yeah.